last time we were in here, we glued the other side, the good side of my box lid. And now we're gonna finish it off and make everything look good, maybe get a chance to route it today, and hopefully start to sand it up and get pretty close to attaching it. What I want to do today is just kind of make a repeat little lesson on how to trim off these inlays if you get into this situation. The last time I did it, I kind of did it little haphazardly. Today what I'm going to do is I'll do it a little bit more thought out, and I'll show you how to raise the blade first and then set the fence. What I did was I trimmed off all the excess Purple Heart that was sticking out on all those corners. The other thing I tried to do is cut as close to this as I could on the ends and the edges. I got pretty close, but when I sand it off and clean it up, I'm sure it'll clean up a little bit better. The other thing that I'm going to do now is, remember, raise the blade so I cut through this so I have less planing to do, or I don't have any planing or less scraping to do. And like I said to you before, had I done this side and this side at the same time, I would have been locked into using a hand plane to plane everything down, and it would definitely have taken me a lot more time. So I'm going to go to the table, so I'm going to raise the blade to that 1.25 inch height we did before. I'm going to raise the blade, set the fence, make the cuts on the ends, make the cuts on the edges, scrape them off. After I scrape them off, I'm going to go to the router table. I want a simple top on this. I just want to bull noses, just break it, because I don't want this too complex. I have this curly oak, and then I have Purple Heart as an inlay, so there's a lot of things going on this. So I want to make that kind of simple. After I do that, I'll sand it up, put my polyurethane on it, and then attach the hinges, and my box will be done. So let's go back over to the table so as a quick refresher. First thing I'm going to do is raise the blade up. And by the way, it is still cold in this shop. I was going to wear a short sleeve shirt today. Thank goodness I didn't, because I'd have to put on an apron and a whole bunch of other things because it is freezing in here. Here's the blade, here's the fence. If you remember, it always is blade height first, fence second, because whenever you lock the fence in, if you try to take this piece and move it, the fence will invariably be in the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this board up. You can see the fence is, the blade is set below the height of the board that I want to trim up. So let me raise this up so I just clear it. That's my 1.25 inch height, so that's all set. And remember, we said we surfaced this down to about 5/8 of an inch. We set it to 5/8 of an inch, but my first cut when I made this the last time, I kind of moved it out a little bit. I'll do the same thing again. I just want to see if this board is going to hit. It looks like it'll just clear. I don't want to hit that surface. So just like I did the last time, what I'll do is I'll make a trial cut. I'll see what I get. And if I can move it in closer, I'll move it in a little bit closer. But I don't want to cut into the good side, because this is definitely the good side of my top. So let's give this a shot. I'm going to keep my sleeves down so I don't freeze. Again, blade height is set, then fence. And also keep in mind, you're not doing this by yourself. If you're in the shop, you're going to do it with me. If you're at home, just want to make sure that you have supervision. You just want to be confident on this. You can always get hurt. You're never too old to get hurt. Ask my finger when I got hurt on the table saw last year. Let's try to make this cut, and let me concentrate. And that is not an easy cut. If I feel this raised up, but I might have a little bit of bow in this top because it's a little closer here than it is here. I might move the fence in just a hair. But every time I cut that on the end, I hate doing it, believe you me. I always get tense, like I am now. And I'm cold. That's definitely better, but I'm not going to get any closer than that. Let me do this other end. I always do the hard parts first. Boy, I don't like That looks pretty good. We'll do the edges. So ladies and gentlemen, you can now see my completed top. I'm going to scrape this down before I go to route this, but you can see the grain pattern, which I love. The joint looks pretty cool. Doesn't look bad compared to this, where you definitely see that contrast. But if I tried flipping this around, tried to put this side over here, I have a different color orange over here than I do over here. But the thing that's cool is that now you can see that inlay goes around on its edge, over all the way, and that's on every single corner. So it looks like this was glued, this was glued, this was glued, this was glued. It looks like it's 12 separate pieces of wood, which is what I really like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How about 9 separate pieces? Oh boy. Let me scrape this real quick before I route this. If you remember how we did it the last time, thank goodness I didn't change anything. My bench pin is still in the table. My bench dog is still in the vise. What did I say was the secret when using this paint scraper? I said, what did I say was the secret when using this paint scraper? It's a question. What is the secret to using the paint scraper? The answer? Bending your knees. Bending your knees, yes indeed. You can still see I have glue on that surface. That's what I want to scrape off. I want to blend this out. Close my eyes, as you remember the last time, and get intimate with, well, you don't have to get intimate with it, but you want to get sensitive to it. High here. For the most part, setting that fence where I did worked out pretty well. This is definitely high here. So I'm going to finesse it. Take it, bend it, move it. But all of it, you're bending your knees when you're doing it. Act like you're part of it. Yep, still raised right here, last spot. And I could still see the glue on that. Okay, the last time you guys were here, I was waxing that box. And now you're going to help me make a decision. What side do you want as the front to this top? Look at how cool that Purple Heart looks. Hot dang. Nice choice, Johnny. Let me get my box out. And this is the decision that you have to make. Do I want to see that in the front? Or do I want to see that in the front? And I'm kind of looking at it from the top. That's the way I kind of do it. I'll flip it over again. You want to see this from the top? Or do you want to see this from the top? I don't know why, but I like this side better. I don't know if it has to do with reading from left to right, but this kind of looks like a cloud to me. This looks like a bigger cloud. I kind of like the way that looks, which means I'm going to mark it. Ow, man. Sharp pencil. I'm definitely going to route the end, so there's no doubt about that. But on this back edge, I'm not going to route this. I do want to route that front edge. Remember, we're going to bullnose that as well. So we're going to definitely do this part. We're definitely doing this part. We're definitely doing this part. We're not going to do that side. So I'm going to take this over to the router table. Remember the lesson. What part do I route first? Whenever I'm routing edge grain and end grain, I always route end grain first. So I'm going to do these two ends. I'm going to do it on its surface, flip it over, do it on its surface. I'll do it on both ends, and then I'll do the edges. After I do that, what I'm going to probably do is set the router so I just break this sharp edge. Because if I take my finger right now and go across there, that's still a sharp edge. So I could hand sand it, and it'll take me time, or I could drop the bit on the router table, and it'll take me about 4 seconds. So that's what I think I'm going to do. Right now, that bit is set to bull nose this 5/8 of an inch. I'll do the two ends first, I'll do the edge, and then I'll change the setting to this back edge, then I'll sand it up. Come on, follow me. A lot going on today. Don't dawdle, let's go, let's go, let's go. When I'm routing and I'm doing end grain, sometimes what stabilizes my board, if it's a very narrow piece, is this miter gauge. Right now I'm about borderline. This board's like, I don't know, like maybe 6 inches wide or so. I could probably safely just take this, hold this up against there and push it. What I think I'm gonna do, because I don't want any screw ups at this point in my life or time with the box, I'm gonna put the miter gauge there. Put the board up against the fence with the ends first. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to route, take it, flip it over, and then I'll route the other surface and see what I get. It's still freezing here. I was going to roll up my sleeves, but again, they're tight. Can I get away with it? Look, my tag's in the back, so that's good. Safety glasses are on. Nobody's around. I'm gonna route this way. Just warm up a little bit. See how I go. My left hand will hold the surface of the board up against the fence on the miter gauge, and I'll push that through. I'm going to take the board, flip it over. I'll do the same thing on this surface. So there's my rounded over part. Let me push down a little bit harder on this first end, because that doesn't really look that good. It looks a little bit better. What I might do is, I'm gonna drop or raise the bit a little bit. More of a round profile. So what I did was raise the blade up so it's going to cut a little bit deeper. The thing you have to keep in mind with the 3/8 rounding over bit is that halfway is a board that's 3/4 of an inch. So I can't make it the full profile of that bit. That's why I'm doing it just a little bit. Looks like, yeah, that's more of the profile that I'm after. That was a better profile than it was the first time. So I routed this end first, and route this end next. It's freezing. My nose is burning. It's about 60 degrees out there, it's about 30 in here. Route that again, just a little harder. Flip it, I'll do the same thing on the other surface. That's a pretty good profile, that's not bad. Which is the edge I'm going to do? I marked it right there. I don't need the miter gauge anymore because I'm going along the grain. Just like the table saw. Right thumb I'll use as a push stick. Left hand I'll keep the stock up against the fence. If I want, use my push stick and push it all the way through. This profile again is inconsistent, so I'm going to reroute that. Let me do this other side first, and I'll push down on it a little bit better. Yeah, that sounds better. How cool does that look with the curly oak there? It's really nice as my front edge. It's wavy, almost like a hologram. I said to you that I could sand this back edge, or I could drop the bit down, so I just take a little bit off of it. You know, I was gonna route it. I think I'm just gonna sand this. I'll just sand this up. I'll just wrap my hand around it and take the sharpness off of it, and I'll be all set. Let's go back over to the old table, work table, and we'll finish this up. I mentioned to you guys earlier that there's a sequence when it comes to sanding. If I'm sanding this top, most people are so anxious to clean up the surface to see what that looks like. But the problem with that is, if I clean up this surface and then I wind up doing the ends, if I do that in variable, wrapping my abrasive paper, I'm going to start with a piece of 80 grit. If I take my abrasive paper and I wrap it around here, which everyone always does, and there's different degrees of wrapping. Like if I take this and just let the weight of my hand rest on there, it's sanding most of this. But there are people who will take this only because it feels good. If I squeeze it over here and go across, I'm actually going to scratch that surface. If I do that after I have sanded the surfaces, you're going to have scratch marks on the surface. So what you're going to have to do is go back over that surface that you already sanded. So that's why I always tell everybody, if I'm sanding this, what I want to do is I always want to do the ends first. I don't want to wrap it around severely. I do want to wrap it around because I want to get that rounded end kind of feel to it. I want it to feel smooth and, you know, of course, like it's been loved. So I'm going to do this end with 80 grit, 120 grit, 220 grit. As I've always said, you want to fall in love with 80 grit. The other thing you notice is my hands are on this top end. I mentioned in an earlier video to you guys that if you're sanding, a lot of times people will sand this way. There's a gap on the top between their abrasive and that top end. So they will see a white streak on the top. If you don't put pressure with your fingers on that top end, you're going to have a white streak because you'll miss sanding because the abrasive paper has been crested. So what you want to do is I want to sand this, put weight on it, and then if you look at this, you see nothing but that clear end grain look. That's what you're after. So of course, and I've told you this ad nauseum, you're going to start with a piece of 80 grit. I'm going to move on to a piece of 120 grit. Here's my 120 grit. And I don't have to sand this nearly as much with 120 grit as I did with 80. But I'm going to do the same thing again, not wrap it around, but I will sand this. With 120, the thing that you have to be careful of as you move up in abrasive is that the paper gets thinner. So as I said, a lot of times with 220 grit, people will burn their hands. And then if you want, if you're really in love with your wood, a little 400 and a little 600. And then if you look at that end, and again, this is the showpiece. This is the top. This is what you want everybody to see. Compare that. And if you could feel that, I mean, it's like feel-o-vision. It's unbelievable. It's like there's a finish on there already. If you compare that side to this side, it's like night and day. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do my ends, 2 ends. I'll do this edge. And remember, that was that back edge that we talked about just breaking it. I have a pretty fresh piece of 80 grit. I don't want this rounded over. But what I do want to do is just kind of break this so that if anybody comes in contact with that edge, they're not going to slice their finger open. That's all I need to do with that back end or that back edge. Is just, well, that kind of feels ratty there. I want to sand that up a little bit better. So there's my back edge. The thing that's really cool, it's really going to look wild, is when we sand this front edge. That should look really sharp. But now, let's take a look at this with the box. I'm not going to bore you guys again. I showed you about sanding the end grain first, the edge grain, the surface. I'll do the rest of that when you guys are somewhere else. And then this is what we're going to have when we kind of finish up, is that box. Like when you look at that, you see the dovetails on the sides there. You see the Purple Heart inlay. It could be as simple as you want. It could be as complex as you want. When you look at this box, I mentioned to you earlier, I have dovetails here. There's Stevens walnut. Where's Stevens walnut box? Hold on, right here. You take a look at his dovetails. Dovetails, walnut, he did a great job with this. A nice piece of maple on the inside for his bottom. It could be any combination you want. As simple as an oak box, mitered, oak plywood on the bottom of it. It looks absolutely fine. It's whatever degree and however complex you want to get with it. Last step is going to be finishing that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can't sand that up. I'll polyurethane that. I'll wax it up. And the very last part is to show you guys how to attach this hinge to that hinge. Uh-oh. My screws. Where are my screws? Uh-oh. I need those 4. Well, I'll tell you what. You do what you have to do. I'm going to see if I can locate 4 screws that I really need that I told you guys not to lose. Till next time, help me find screws, please.